Giordano. Driver of the number 22, Pennzoil Auto Trader Ford. Joey, this is your third win here at Talladega. Why don't you take us through that?
My coat got shaken up a little bit. We're good now.
Why don't you just take us through that?
Hello and welcome into this week's edition of The Pole Position right here on Racing News Now. As always, I'm your host Garth Allen. Thank you once again for joining me tonight. We got 4 races to recap for you tonight. Formula One was in Azerbaijan yesterday in the streets of Baku for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And then we have 3 races from Talladega to talk about. ARCA was in Talladega this weekend, as well as the NASCAR Xfinity Series and the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. But since we've got 3 races at one track, we're going to start off with the oddball, that being the Formula One race this weekend, the one race that we are covering that was not at Talladega. And talk about a crazy race. And you know, I figured this would be a crazy race looking at last year's Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And if you remember way back into February on the first episode of RN Talks, where we made predictions for this season, I said that Azerbaijan was my most anticipated race on the Formula One schedule because it was such a crazy race last season. I assumed that it would be the same way this year, and boy, howdy, was it. Lots of stuff happening start to finish in this race. This really, I think, was Sebastian Vettel's race to lose, and he lost it for himself. Dive bomb move down into turn number 1 late in the race after the safety car period. Locks up the right front, and that basically ends his day as he's trying to get back around Valtteri Bottas off of that safety car period. More or less ruins his day. But there was so much happening there in those last few laps. Bottas blows a tire, cutting it from some debris from the earlier incident that had caused that safety car period. So that took away what was really probably an assured win for him after Vettel's mistake. And then you just get Lewis Hamilton falling into a win. I think that's the first race Lewis Hamilton has ever won in a race that really was exciting. Lewis Hamilton, usually when he wins the race, he just drives off with it and nothing really happens. This was the exact opposite of a normal Lewis Hamilton win. Great run for Kimi Räikkönen, his best finish of the season in second, and also on the podium, a big shout out to Force India and Sergio Perez, a fantastic run for him today. Really probably was 5th place material there at the end of the race, and then Bottas has his problems, and about the same time, Perez gets around Vettel, who was nursing that right front after he had locked it up there with 3 or 4 to go, something like that, when they let go of that safety car period. And Perez ends up kind of falling into a podium finish, which you can't fault him for that. As we said, Vettel ends up in the 4th position, and Carlos Sainz in the Renault with a strong 5th place finish on the day. Charles Leclerc with all kinds of speed there at the end of the race and comes home with a fantastic finish for Sauber Ferrari in 6th. The rest of your top 10, Fernando Alonso in 7th, Lance Stroll in the Williams in 8th, Stoffel Van Dorn in the McLaren in 9th, and Brendan Hartley in 10th brings home the Toro Rosso. So we look down through here. 6 cars did not finish this race. Romain Grosjean had an incident under safety car of all times. He did not finish the race in 15th. Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo. Another crazy, weird thing happening to this Red Bull team. Again, I don't even know how to describe this. They get into a wreck with each other. 16th and 17th would be where they would finish. Verstappen in 16th, Ricciardo in 17th. Nico Hülkenberg having problems in the mid stages of the race, comes home in 18th. And first lap problems for Esteban Ocon and Sergei Sirotkin, 19th and 20th for them respectively. So now let's take a look at the driver standings following the fourth round of the 2018 Formula One Championship. Lewis Hamilton has now assumed the points lead over Sebastian Vettel after his win today and Vettel's issues. He holds a 4-point lead over Vettel. Kimi Räikkönen, with his strong second-place finish, jumps 2 spots up to third, leapfrogging over Bottas and Ricciardo. Sergio Perez with the biggest jump of the week. He had 0 points through the first 3 rounds of the season. Finishes on the podium this week in third, picks up 15 points, and that jumps him 6 spots all the way up to 9th in the points. The funny thing is, looking at this, Sergio Perez, sitting in 9th right now, has only finished in the points 1 race this season. He is 3 points off of Max Verstappen in that Red Bull. Just crazy how things like that work out. A lot of shuffling down here in the bottom portions of the points, which makes sense because these are all the guys that don't have a lot of points. So it would make sense for if somebody down in this area gets points, it would really shuffle things around. As such, Carlos Sainz jumps 2 spots. Pierre Gasly down 2. Kevin Magnussen also down 2. Charles Leclerc up 3 with his strong run in 6th yesterday. Stoffel Van Dorn down 3. Lance Stroll up 2. And Marcus Ericsson drops 3 as well. So that's your recap of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Now let's head to Talladega. And we will start with the ARCA Racing Series presented by Menards. They were in action for the General Tire 200 Friday evening. And in the closest finish in ARCA history, less than 0.03 of a second, Zane Smith picks up the victory over Joe Graff Jr. in that 77 car for Chad Bryant Racing. A very, very strong run for Mr. Smith, his second win of the season, the first repeat winner of this season through the first 4 races. Definitely solidifying himself right now as the championship favorite. Michael Self, your Daytona winner, with another strong finish on a plate track, comes home in the 3rd position. And Sheldon Creed in 4th, and a strong run for Josh Williams in his return to the ARCA Racing Series. Hasn't run an ARCA race in a couple of years. He rounds out the top 5 and 5th. Rest of your top 10, Max Tullman for Mason Mitchell Motorsports in 6th, Brandon Lynn, Bobby Gerhart, Travis Braden, and Andy Seiss rounds out the top 10. So that'll pretty well do it for our ARCA recap for tonight. Just wanted to go through that very quickly for you. We have a new show we are premiering. I'm not 100% sure on the timeline. It will probably be tomorrow night at 8 p.m., that's what I'm shooting for right now for a more in-depth ARCA recap. We're going to call it This Week in ARCA. And the first episode of that will show up tomorrow night, Tuesday night at 8 p.m. And we'll have a bigger breakdown for you of this past weekend's action in Talladega. So we'll have that, like I said, should be tomorrow night, 8 p.m. for the first episode of This Week in ARCA. So that moves us now to the NASCAR action for the weekend. And the Xfinity Series was the first of those 2 races on Saturday afternoon. The 27th annual Sparks Energy 300, 115 laps from the Talladega Superspeedway. Went just a bit into overtime. And in one of the probably the biggest surprise winner of the season thus far in the Xfinity Series, Spencer Gallagher picks up his first career Xfinity Series victory in a wild finish. Wild may be an understatement. Crazy Xfinity race. Brandon Jones with a strong second place finish. Justin Allgaier. Noah Gragson with another strong finish. That's 2 Xfinity starts for him. A second and a fourth for his finishes. So not a bad start to his Xfinity career. And Elliott Sadler rounds out the top 5. Rest of your top 10, strong run for Ryan Sieg in 6th, John Hunter Nemechek 7th, Tyler Reddick, Cole Custer, and a strong run for Garrett Smithley in 10th. Looking down through the rest of the field, Christopher Bell comes home in the 12th position, Michael Annett in 14th, Shane Lee in his second career Xfinity start. Remember, he made his first career start at Bristol a couple of weeks ago. He comes home in 15th, Chase Briscoe in 16th. Ryan Reed with a disappointing 22nd place finish. Daniel Hemrick, problems late, comes home in the 23rd position. Matt Tifft in 25th. Austin Cindric getting caught up in some late problems. 30th for that number 22 machine for Austin Cindric. Ty Majeski in the 37th position, and Ryan Truex in the 38th after both of them getting caught up in an early accident on lap 32. Alright, so now we'll take a look at the point standings for the Xfinity Series following the Sparks Energy 300, and not a lot of movements here. Obviously, Spencer Gallagher moving up into the winners column. In terms of the guys with points, Daniel Hemrick falls 2 spots after his 30th place run this week. That bumps Justin Allgaier and Cole Custer each up a spot. Brandon Jones moves up 1 as Ryan Truex drops 2. Ryan Sieg up 1 spot into the 16th position. He moves ever closer to that, into the 15th position, ever closer to that cutoff line and into the playoff grid. And Kaz Grala drops 1 out of our playoff picture, as we've only got down to 15th here on the graphic. He drops down to the 16th position. Seems to be a trend for Kaz Grala lately. He seems to be losing about 1 spot per week of late. Hopefully the slide for Kaz Grala stops soon and he can rebound from that. Alright, so that's your look at the Xfinity Series for the weekend. Now we'll move to the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. They were also in Talladega this weekend for the 49th annual Geico 500 188 laps from the Talladega Super Speedway. Joey Logano picks up his first win of the season, his first since Richmond last year. We talked about last week how it had been a year since Logano had won a race and when it would happen for him. He's been up front basically every week this season, so you knew it was only a matter of time. He was up front all day in this race, did lead a total of 70 laps. I don't know that you can necessarily say he was the strongest car in the field, though, although that 70 laps led is the most by anyone in this race. Kurt Busch with a very fast car at the end of this race. Unfortunately, just couldn't get any kind of a run to do anything with Logano there at the end. So he comes home in the second position as everybody was 2 and 3 wide behind him. Never could get that push on the last lap to really do anything with Logano. Chase Elliott comes home in a strong third place finish. Kevin Harvick and Ricky Stenhouse round out the top 5. Kudos to David Reagan coming home in the 6th position. Eric Almirola 7th. Alex Bowman in the 88 car in 8th. Ryan Newman in 9th. And Daniel Suarez rounds out the top 10. Looking down through the rest of the field, Jimmy Johnson rebounding from his late wreck where he got caught up with his teammate William Byron and a whole mess of other cars in the big one. Rebounds from that, continued running afterward, and comes home in the 12th position. Kyle Busch, who was running 4-4 in a row, said it would be easier to win the Powerball than it would be to win at Talladega. And it seems that he was right as he comes home in the 13th position. Bubba Wallace had a fast car throughout the day. Only able to muster a 16th place finish at the end of the race, though. Ryan Blaney caught up in that late wreck as well. Was able to continue running, but not really able to contend for a win after that. Comes home in the 18th position. Looking down through here, Martin Truex caught up in a wreck, ends up 3 laps down in the 26th position. Jamie McMurray, 28th, also in a wreck. And then all these guys down through here at some point or another in a wreck throughout the day. William Byron, 29th. Paul Menard had a very fast car. Still looking for that 100th win for the Wood Brothers. Didn't quite get it today. Comes home in 30th after getting caught up in a wreck. Clint Boyer, 31st. Brad Keselowski, 33rd. Austin Dillon, 35th. And Trevor Bayne, 38th. Eric Jones, 39th. Kyle Larson, shotgun on the field in 40th. So we will head over to the media center now. Once again, we'll see what Mr. Joey Logano had to say after his first win of the season.
Man, it was crazy. Such a powerful team, powerful car. I was able to get everything working really well today. It just feels so good to be back in victory lane. But I think all the Fords had very fast cars. You saw qualifying and the way the stages worked. It showed that we were working together as a team really well. So I was proud to be a part of that. And there at the end, you work together as much as you can, and then you just want to make sure a Ford wins, and you hope it's you, but you try to do the right thing as well. And I had some Stewart Haas cars behind me, which aren't necessarily teammates, but with the Ford performance relationship, it's the closest thing that I'm ever going to have to it. So I was thankful to have them behind me. I was wondering what kind of fight they were going to put on there at the end. They were working together, but they got split up, and that kind of changed the complexion of the race when it came down to the end there, the last few corners. So it was all about just making the right blocks, keeping them close, so I didn't pull away too far and they get a big run. Just staring in the mirror pretty much the whole time. So great job by a team. Our spotter, TJ Majors, he was a great addition to our race team as far as speedway racing. He's the best as they come, and I think Dale Jr. taught him a lot. So thanks to Dale for retiring so I can get him, and it's been a great first, it's been 10 races or so this year so far. So it was, we've been consistent. We've been getting better every week. Last week we were able to win a couple stages, lead some laps. Today, lead some laps and get some good stage points, and then, ultimately have the checkered flag in our hands. So it feels really good to pull back into victory lane again. It's been so long. It's been way too long. So we're not going to wait that long again.
All right, so before we wrap up here, let's check the points for the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series and look at the playoff grid. Obviously, Joey Logano slotting into the winners column now, and he is the top of the guys with one win, as he has the most points of anybody with one win. Overall, he is second in points currently behind Kyle Busch. Looking at the guys with points, Kurt Busch, the biggest mover this week, he is up 3. He is now tops of those guys without a win. That drops Brad Keselowski down 1, Denny Hamlin down 1, and Ryan Blaney down 1 spot as well. Alex Bowman jumps up 1, bumping Eric Jones down a spot in the points, and Ricky Stenhouse jumps 2 spots this week, up to the 16th position there, now at the bottom of the playoff grid. So that is your points for this week, and I think that will just about do it for us this week. Like I said, new show coming up tomorrow called This Week in ARCA. We'll have a more in-depth look at this week's ARCA Racing Series presented by Menards event from the Talladega Superspeedway. So you want to tune in for that. We'll have video recap of the race. We will break down a little more in depth the results. Still working on getting race winner Zane Smith on the show. Not 100% sure if that will happen or not. We're in talks with MDM Motorsports PR right now about that, but not 100% sure if his schedule will line up with ours to be able to do that or not. But we are working on it and trying to get him on for you. So hopefully we'll have that as well. And we'll take a look at the points following Talladega as well, maybe a little bit more. So you want to tune in and see what This Week in ARCA is all about tomorrow night at 8 p.m. So, at that, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell for the notification so you don't miss a thing from Racing News Now. And hit that big thumbs up button if you like the video. It is much appreciated when you do. And don't forget to support us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/racingnewsnow. It is definitely not required by any means. It is completely free to watch our videos. But we appreciate when you do donate to us on Patreon, because that does help us to better our content for you and continue to give you quality content into the future. So with that, this has been The Pole Position, where you always start on the front row. I'm Garth Allen for Racing News Now.